Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and this time we're joined by Derek Bittner and Ash Paulson to discuss a bunch of recent Nintendo news about F-Zero, Pikmin, Starfox, and Zelda. So let's get started. Alright guys, so a bunch of interesting news about upcoming games. I mean, nothing super detailed, but enough for us to discuss. Came out from Smosh, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But first, because this just happened, we found out Nintendo's releasing a limited edition version of Majora's Mask in the US. It'll retail for $50 and comes with specifically a limited edition version of a Skull Kid action figure, which I think looks actually pretty cool. I don't know if I'll get it myself, simply because I don't tend to rebuy games that I get for free. But if I were to buy a game, it probably would be that version because it looks awesome. What do you guys think about that one?
I mean, it's really tempting. I mean, I said before, I haven't really played much of Majora's Mask, but I mean that vision of the Skull Kid is sort of iconic at this point. It's just him looking down at his hand with the mask on, and it just looks really cool, and the quality seems really up there, and it's not really that much more. Like I was expecting when I saw this for it to be like, oh, okay, it's probably going to be about 80, 90, maybe $100 because that figure looks really good, but no, 50 seems very reasonable, and apparently a lot of other people agree too because it is sold out on Amazon.
Wow.
And GameStop.
Yeah, and GameStop.
Yeah, it's already sold out in both places.
Yeah, I have a friend who was like, he's like, I need to get this. And he was totally bummed that it was already sold out everywhere.
Yeah, I really want to get it. I mean, like you, Andre, I tend not to rebuy games that I get review copies of for free, but I might have to make an exception for this just because it is Majora's Mask 3D and the Skull Kid figure looks super cool, but that's also if I can find it to buy anywhere because It's already sold out, so... Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, even the box actually looks pretty awesome, because they have, I mean, first off, I just love the colors they chose for the box. It instantly reminds you of Majora's Mask. But I do like the cutout in it that's also Majora's Mask shaped, which you can then see the figurine through. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's just really neat.
They really did capture, they're capturing the mood of Majora's Mask very well with this with the 3DS version, and even just the figurine. I think it looks really good. It's no wonder it's sold out so quickly.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that covers it for the figurine. Not much to say there. We're not going to analyze it, but let's get to the more interesting stuff, which is a recent interview Smosh Games had with Miyamoto, and a few interesting tidbits came out of it. Again, nothing earth-shattering, but some things that's worth discussion. And first up, I want to talk about F-Zero, because this is super interesting. So, Miyamoto says, first up, that they tend to focus on less traditional racing games, and we've seen that. They don't make that many, and the ones they have made have been, Mario Kart, which basically started the kart genre, F-Zero, which, is a high-speed racer, which basically inspired Wipeout, and then, like Excite Bike and Excite Truck and stuff like that. So with that focus, he mentions that F-Zero may return to come up with a controller interface that makes sense for it. What the hell does that mean? What does that mean?
It's Miyamoto being Miyamoto is what it means.
I mean, they've made F-Zero games before, and they worked.
The controller seems to be fine. It's like, I mean, I understand wanting to be innovative,
right?
But there's a point of being innovative where it just sort of negates anything. Like, people at this point, you've dragged people out for 12 years at this point. Just give us a damn game. I'm not even a huge fan of the F-Zero series. I like it well enough, but even I'm like, 12 years is a pretty long time, and to claim that it hasn't come out because you don't have a right controller scheme, I'm pretty sure Sega did okay with F-Zero GX.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this before about Miyamoto. He's a visionary, he's a genius. It's true. I mean, but I feel like he's becoming a dinosaur because he's forcing these kinds of, in my opinion, harebrained ideas, and as a result, certain dead series like F-Zero aren't coming back as soon as they should be. We don't need a special controller for F-Zero. The controller we need is one with a D-pad, face buttons, and shoulder buttons, and we have that. We've had it for years. We've had it on the Wii, we've had it on the Wii U. I don't think there's a single F-Zero fan out there who would be like, yeah, I'm okay waiting years and years more for an F-Zero game simply because we don't have a specialized controller for it. Mm-hmm. Come on.
I'm trying to figure out what he even means by that. The only thing I can think of is something akin to the F-Zero arcade cabinet. I don't know if you guys have played that one. The arcade version of F-Zero GX.
Yeah.
And that's where you basically had a steering wheel, and it had something cool where it had like the paddles behind it, and that's how you'd lean. So if you wanted to turn sharper, you would press the left paddle or the right paddle right behind the steering wheel. If I remember correctly, I think that's how that worked. And that's something I actually wish they had included on the on the Wii Remote wheel. Like, they had the left button, the B button behind, on the left side. If they had one on the right side, I think that could have worked really well for an F-Zero game, where you use a Wii wheel, which I know a lot of people didn't like. I actually quite liked it. And you could actually use those triggers, like paddles, to lean sharper. But again, that's still something you can do perfectly well on the normal controller with the shoulder buttons. So
exactly. I mean, and if they really wanted to, they could just release, a specialized wheel for F-Zero if they wanted to.
Right.
But they don't need to. It's just make a new game, or have Sega make a new game. But don't make us wait for a new controller, because how many people? I mean, it's like you said about the Wii wheel. It's like I personally didn't like it. But, whether you like it or not, it's not like it was required to play Mario Kart 8. Right. And it's not like even the majority of people probably use it when they're playing Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart Wii or whatever. So, I don't know. I feel like a controller is the worst reason to not release a new F-Zero game, or a new game in any series, really.
I mean, do you even have any idea of what he could do, or what they could do with a new controller, or like what other controller interface could work for this?
I don't. Yeah. I mean, that's why I don't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, not really. It's like does he thinking the next system where they're going to come up with something like some even more crazier controller they're going to go with, or control scheme? Like racing games aren't really that complicated. You don't have to do much with them. I mean, you get some interesting things in there. You got gas, you got brake, you got shift, you got drifting. You do the whole Excite Bike thing where you're trying to level out your car for stuff like that. I mean, racing games have been around for quite a while. People, believe it or not, other developers have found ways to do these futuristic racing games without changing up the control scheme that much.
Right.
So I'm really at a loss here. I mean, the only time I've seen technology hold back a new game in the series is okay, we went through the entire Nintendo 64 with no Metroid game. Understandable, they didn't really know what direction to take the series, but and then with GameCube they figured out, okay, let's try this first-person adventure thing, and we got a new game in the series, that way. And other sorts of examples like that. Why is this so difficult? I think that's the big question on all of our minds. Is okay, what makes this so tricky for you that you can't just put out a game in the series that maybe has a few other ideas that doesn't have maybe your controller idea, that you can just hold off until you do get what you want to do with it?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm wondering if the controller excuse is really just a cover for what they want to say, which is, well, we're not sure there's a market for it. And if that's how you feel, then say it. I mean, I totally understand that. You can't release a game unless you think there's a market for it, if you think you're going to recoup your costs. And I'll admit, I'm an F-Zero fan, but I don't know if there's a market for it these days. The series, of course, has its fans, but those fans aren't going to be enough to recoup the cost of development. And if that's the case, say so. I mean, I get that. But this whole controller thing just frustrates me to no end, because it's Miyamoto being Miyamoto.
Yeah. I guess I do wonder if it is a hint, as I think Derek touched on, as to their next console. Maybe it will be a game on their next console, and they're, and maybe we'll have another unique controller. Nintendo does seem to be all about that these days, is just making new controllers really for the sake of it. I just don't know what they could even do with that. But I did have one idea just thinking about this, only because it's the only thing I can think of. But I do wonder if they're thinking maybe incorporating a new type of gameplay into the game. And it got me thinking about Zero Racers, which was an F-Zero spin-off, you want to call it, or sequel, basically, that was going to appear on the Virtual Boy. And it actually took place in all 3 dimensions, where you were basically flying through a tunnel instead of simply being on a racetrack. So I wonder if maybe they could incorporate a flying element into the game, and maybe they'd want a unique controller to tie into that, for better control in a 3-dimensional environment.
So basically what you're saying is that you are exclusively confirming here today that the next F-Zero game is going to be a crossover with Sonic Rider Zero Gravity, right?
You're right, there you go, exactly.
So that control scheme made me think, okay, so making a racing version of Starfox?
Yeah,
because you could cut up, down, left, right, all that stuff, and just in a racing environment. I mean, I guess that could work. I mean, it would certainly fit the series and make for some potentially interesting level designs.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess Star Fox is another example where people just want another game in the series, and from everything we're hearing, they're coming up with a completely new control scheme for it that may or may not, click with fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I will say, at the least, I'm curious to know what he's talking about, but I have no idea. Maybe they have some idea in mind that will come up with some idea that will blow me away. But I am just completely baffled by those comments. All right, well, speaking of Starfox, actually, Derek, as you mentioned, they also touched on that a little bit, and they mentioned that it's going to be playable at E3. And speaking of, kind of weird control interfaces, they also elaborated a bit on how the gamepad's going to work. And Miyamoto specifically said that he believes Star Fox benefits greatly from having 2 screens. Now, we've already touched on this before. We had a discussion not too long ago about this. But he goes on to mention that with a dual screen setup, it will allow for cinematic moments to blend with continuous gameplay. And that's something we kind of inferred a little bit before from just a cinematic comment they threw out earlier. But now we have like some concrete, statements here that ties into the fact that they are using both to add to the cinematic feel of the game. So I thought we'd explore that a little bit more. If you guys had any idea what they mean by that, and what do you think of that even, or anything he said about Star Fox?
It sounds interesting. I mean, it's always good to keep the gameplay in while continuing to play. I mean, I think that's why audio logs in a lot of games are so popular, such a big thing now, because you can get a bit of story while keeping the gameplay going. And I think it's going to be something similar to that, because we already had like story segments while playing in Star Fox 64 and many of the other games. That's one of the staples. My thought process from that is maybe those little talking cinematics are going to be a lot more involved now. Maybe. And they'll actually have different cutscenes going on that's showing off Slippy's in trouble again. Here's a full cinematic going on in here while you're flying around and doing your own thing, and maybe you can even get into the cutscene and save him, or maybe not. Mm-hmm. I'm really not sure, but I'm just sort of spitballing just based on his description.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe there could be dialogue trees now, where there are different conversations and situations you can get into with your wingman, depending on the different dialogue choices you maybe select on the gamepad screen. Another idea I was thinking is maybe the gamepad screen would be like an interior view of the R-wing cockpit, and you actually have to press buttons within the cockpit to cause things to happen on the TV at certain times. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to say what he means. I think there could be some cool ideas here, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. But as I think we have kind of talked about and all agreed on before, I just hope that's not necessarily the focus. I hope the focus is on making a good Star Fox game, and not necessarily on trying all these new G-Wiz type things with the gamepad. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I do get what you mean. So what I take away from these comments, and maybe there's so many ways you can read into this, right? But before I had mentioned, when they mentioned cinematic in a previous discussion, it reminded me of Metal Gear Solid, and how the microwave tunnel I mentioned, and how there was you could see other cinematics happening at the same time, which I thought actually did enhance that. But the microwave tunnel was overall a very simple sequence. It wasn't one that was very gameplay focused. And now with these more recent comments, I'm actually now thinking along the lines of maybe he means Elite Beat Agents, right? Where you have gameplay happening while cutscenes happen on the other screen, where there's if you glance at the other screen, I believe you could see stuff happening at the same time. So maybe that's what they're going for here. Maybe, if you want to stay focused on the game, you'll be watching the gamepad, to aim, as I've said before. But at the same time, maybe, outside your immediate field of vision, you can kind of see what's happening on the TV, and maybe that'd provide a better idea of what's happening around you. Maybe the TV will cut to different teammates, and you can see what's happening for them, and if you need to go save them, for instance, or it can show an objective happening, and you can fly, and you can determine if you need to fly there or not to help out.
Mm-hmm. Right, but there again you run into the problem, and I use that term loosely, but you run into the problem of wanting to see the game in beautiful HD, but being forced to look at the gamepad most of the time. Yeah. Personally, I hope that that Star Fox is designed such that you're looking at the TV most of the time and occasionally glancing at the gamepad. But I don't want this to be a situation like Kirby and the Rainbow Curse or Little Inferno, where most of the gameplay is actually on the gamepad, and you don't really get to enjoy the gorgeous visuals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally.
Star Fox just seems like it should be grander than that.
I totally know what you mean, and especially with the fact that, in Star Fox, you're often targeting small objects that are far away, and you're primarily playing on the gamepad. They're going to be pretty tough to see, unless they're doing something totally different now, where that's not an issue. I will say, during E3, as I recall, I believe in the demo they played, which keep in mind was super early, I should mention that some outlets got to play. I believe you were able to switch viewpoints from the TV and the gamepad and back again. But I don't think they've touched on that since. I don't know if that's still a feature, or if it comes up at certain times, or if it's a permanent thing. So maybe you'll always be able to play on the TV, and maybe there are cinematics, as I mentioned, maybe they appear on the gamepad instead. But either way, it still introduces potentially an issue of having to look at two screens at once, basically, right? And that works pretty well on the 3DS or DS, as in the case of Elite Beat Agents, because the screens are right next to each other. I mean, you can see one as you're looking at the other. Whereas with a gamepad, like, unless you're sitting, like, with your knees up and the gamepad resting against them, it's hard to keep both in view at the same time, right? And I feel like looking between the two kind of, like, might break that immersion.
No, you're right. That is the big problem with the gamepad. Yes, you get two screens, but not always able to, you can't really look at both at the same time. You do have to keep focus on one or the other. And we've seen most games just sort of use the gamepad as sort of a second screen with the same stuff on it. So if somebody else wants to play something on the TV, you can just go in the gamepad and continue your game, which is fine. But here's the conundrum we're running into, is that we want to see Nintendo make use of the gamepad, make it seem worth this whole investment into this new controller. Yet every time they do, we always can't help but think, well, wouldn't it be nice just to have it all on the same TV? That way we don't have to look back and forth. Yeah. Like, there's a bit of a flaw here. I mean, I like the ideas we're coming up with. They all sound pretty neat and interesting. But a part of me also just doesn't think, well, can't you just put like a little space on the screen that shows that as well? Or are we going? That's what sort of makes me think that this might be a little bit more in depth than we're used to when it comes to those type of off-screen things like Elite Beat Agents or even Kid Icarus Uprising, where there's constantly conversations going on, but you don't necessarily need to look at them in order to enjoy them. Mm-hmm. It sounds like if they're going much more cinematic here, we almost want to see them, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out in regards to Star Fox.
Right.
As we've said before in our past Star Fox discussion, we haven't even seen a proper trailer yet. We've seen these little tidbits and demonstrations from the people who did get to see it in person. It looked very rough just from what we saw. Yeah, great, we're going to get to play it, but I kind of hope we get a trailer at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so do I. Just one small point I want to point out real quick, because a lot of people mentioned before in our past discussions that we seem hypocritical, or at least I do. I forget who they're addressing it to, in that, I complained about the gamepad not being used, and then once Nintendo uses it, I complained about that. And for me, yeah, I do want the gamepad to be used. I also just wanted it to be used in smart ways, and I've not been completely happy with how Nintendo's been using it. So yes, I do want them to use it more. I also want them to use it, in ways that benefit the game. And in most cases that I've seen it used, I haven't enjoyed its implementation. As I mentioned with Captain Toad, it would have worked better with a Wii remote. With that said, I loved how it was implemented in Wind Waker HD and in Nintendo Land. But it just seems like a lot of the time it's just like they have no better idea for it, so they shoehorn its use in there, and it's sometimes to the detriment of the game.
I think that probably was you, because you're usually the only one that complains about the gamepad. I don't think Derek and I complain about it that often.
Yeah.
It sort of comes up in general things. I agree with you. I mean, it's not. Even though I don't say anything, it does generally bother me,
right?
Because I want to enjoy this game. I want to be immersed, and it's kind of hard to do sometimes when a game specifically pulls you out and needs you to make you look at it. One of the few games I thought did make it work pretty well, because it was in limited quantities, was Rayman Legends, the Murphy missions.
Right.
Where you went to the gamepad and used him, and you were focusing on the gamepad, but you're only doing it for at most 5 to 10 minutes at a time, depending on how much trouble you're having with the level. Mm-hmm. So that didn't feel as obtrusive to me, because it was a different type of level that helped break up the type of thing, the typical platforming. So there's good examples of it. There's examples where it just is not necessary. But yeah, it's all about the smart use, and I really hope that's going to be the case here with Star Fox, because we really need a good Star Fox game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I'm hoping for one. So we'll see. I mean, it will be playable at E3, as I mentioned, and I mean, I do like the old Star Fox games. I'm very curious to see what they're doing here. And, it could be a great use of it. It could be brilliant. Who's to say at this point? So I am at the least curious as I am with whatever they mean with F-Zero. Alright, so there's just one final thing I want to talk about here, and this is actually some old news. So we're done with the Smosh stuff, but for whatever reason, a interview that happened in September from the Reno Gazette Journal recently resurfaced with some news about with Enuma, or an interview with Enuma, that touches on Hyrule Warriors' influence and what it could mean for Zelda Wii U. Now, again, nothing earth-shattering here, but I do think it's interesting. So let me just read this here. So the journal asked him, what influence Hyrule Warriors might have on Zelda Wii U. And Enuma answers with this. One aspect of Hyrule Warriors that really left a big impression on me was how the big bosses can actually move across the map while you're fighting them. For example, you can have a boss fight by heading toward your stronghold, and you'll attack them and then follow them. That's something you don't usually see in a Zelda game, because bosses are usually in enclosed spaces, so that kind of gameplay feels fresh to me. It also works really well in an expansive world, which is what we're planning to do for the next Zelda game. It's going to be a really open world, so that's the kind of gameplay we'd really like to incorporate. I actually find that really interesting. We were talking about this before, and you guys didn't seem to give it much thought. I think it actually could have huge implications for this game. Because as he says, most boss fights take place in very small enclosed areas typically. Whereas if they were like on the world map, that's a pretty big change. And given how big the map is, I think that actually could be really cool. Just one idea I have is what if you can see like maybe different enemies appear on almost like a little bit like Dylan's Rolling Western, where you can see different enemies on the map, or maybe just a single one even, and you have to race there to get them to prevent them from, destroying a town or something, as he basically says.
We've already seen hints of this, I believe, from the first trailer. That giant enemy, I don't know if that was a boss or a regular enemy.
That's true.
But you're all moving across the map, and we already know that horse, riding on Epona across the world and being able to battle on her is very important. So it does lend itself quite well to having a boss in the overworld and basically chasing it down. We've seen hints of this, like in Twilight Princess against the King Bulblin?
Yeah, that's true, right.
So there's been little bits of this, but they've always been generally pretty enclosed. You're not really going that far with them. Here it sounds like they could end up kind of anywhere. Maybe there's some limits, who knows what kind of limits they'll place on it, but there is potential here to make it a little bit more involved. And yeah, I'd be down for that. It's always, it makes the world seem more open and cohesive, and anything can happen. So that's always a nice little touch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little more unsure about it. I really enjoyed Hyrule Warriors, but one of the parts I enjoyed was not necessarily the boss fights. I think the boss fights are actually kind of forgettable. I mean, I know the enemies were huge and they look cool, but the fights always felt a little chaotic and just a little random to me, like a little unmanageable. And I don't know. I just didn't really enjoy the boss fights as much as I do traditional Zelda boss fights. And I'm also concerned about the fact that what he's saying basically describes the imprisoned boss fight in Skyward Sword that you fight 3 times. Now, I know it's in a more enclosed area, but you are defending a stronghold, and you are following a moving boss, a giant moving boss. And that was by far my least favorite part of Skyward Sword. I hated that fight, and you have to fight him 3 times. And so I'm a little concerned. I think if it's done well, sure, go for it. But I don't want anything like the imprisoned boss fight to ever appear in another Zelda game again. Personally, I just hated it.
So I thought the imprisonment was actually kind of cool, or maybe more interesting. At least battling once, but I do agree they get a little bit old by the end.
Sure, for the first time, it's fine. The first time I was like, okay, this is kind of a cool fight. Okay, second and third times, I hated it.
I did, right, I can see that. So, and I can also see what you're saying about Hyrule Warriors. I didn't play much of that game, but the boss fights, didn't really, I don't know, they didn't feel, I don't even know how to describe it quite yet. But I feel like, I think they're thinking the idea more loosely. I mean, I think if you take that basic idea and incorporate it into a true Zelda game, it's going to function a lot differently than how it did in Hyrule Warriors, right?
Sure.
And I think that idea could be really cool. Like, I've mentioned before how I like Majora's Mask because of the time-based element, right? Like, how it felt like every action had meaning. And this seems like that idea on a smaller scale, or I guess a bigger scale, if you look at the size of the bosses, as he alludes to. But, I like the idea of there being, like, an actual impact, maybe, like if the bosses actually do impact the world. Like if you lose against a boss, maybe you don't start over when you're done. Maybe it just destroys a town or a house or something, and that impacts the course of the game.
Right.
You could even go even further than that and have like a choice where you have the same boss, but there's 2 of them, and they're going for separate villages.
Right.
Which village do you save?
It's
that
like,
could be cool.
Yeah, it's like that Spider-Man scenario, right? You save Mary Jane or the train full of passengers or whatever.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, as far as the Hyrule Warriors bosses, to me, they didn't really move around much. I mean, yeah, they would chase after you if you left them behind, but that's just the nature of the game because you had other missions to complete or whatnot. But fighting the bosses themselves, they were not really... they'd get annoying, of course, if you got into the higher levels and the later adventure bits, but they're basically just pattern recognition, like, to the extreme. Like, wait for Dodongo to open his mouth, throw in the bombs, hit him a bunch. With Goma, wait till he does his laser attack, his eye glows blue, hit him with arrow, hit him a bunch. It's the same sort of thing. It's just all pattern recognition. So the size of them and moving around never really affected me that much. I only really see it when I actually actively ignored them. Did they actually move around the map and become a problem? Or if I was doing another type of mission and multiples appeared and I'm trying to kill a bunch of enemies in a certain time limit, they're getting in my way because they just take too long to actually take down myself.
Right.
So it feels... Hyrule Warriors feels like a very weird comparison to a traditional Zelda game as far as bosses are concerned. But if you can take it very loosely, extrapolate it on that, change it up, and maybe implement some new ideas, it could definitely work and be interesting for this new Zelda.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this case when they are trying to do some things different, and you do have this large open world, where so far we haven't seen there being a ton to do in it, even though they do say there is. I do think having boss fights take place in that world itself could tie into that well. No, I guess the question is though, do you think they will do this? Like, do you think he's hinting at anything here, or is he just spouting off like just random ideas?
It kind of feels to me like he's just kind of talking and just kind of talking aimlessly, and saying, "Oh yeah, that would be cool," but not necessarily. He might actually end up putting something like that in the game, but at this particular stage, I don't think he is like, "Oh, I'm definitely doing that." I think it's something he might consider, but for now, it just sounds like he's like, "Oh, that could be cool. I'll think about it."
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So for me, I actually lean a little bit closer to it actually having some meaning. But I feel like Nintendo's done this a lot, right? Like Miyamoto, for instance, will throw out, like a theoretical idea, and then sure enough, it'll become a product or a gameplay feature, like at some point in time. And actually, speaking of which, okay, well, I guess I lied, because there's one more thing I want to talk about from the Smosh interview, and that's the fact that, with Miyamoto throwing out ideas that become future games, he did touch on Pikmin, saying that it's a series they want to keep making new games for, and he has lots of ideas, but nothing decided yet. So that's actually super vague. But it is also encouraging that they actually are looking at making more Pikmin things. And I guess it makes sense given that they just released those Pikmin shorts, right? Why would they make those if they had no interest in doing more stuff with Pikmin? So I guess, I have two questions for you guys. What do you think about that, them making more Pikmin games? And do you have any ideas for what they could do that they haven't done already?
I think it's a great idea. I know a lot of people out there love Pikmin. I recently picked up Pikmin 3, even though I haven't had time to play it yet. I really enjoyed the first one, sort of only played a little bit of the second one, but the third one does look really good. And it seems like one of those passion projects for Miyamoto where he just really is into it, likes the characters. Those short movies were really adorable, and you almost really want to see that kind of characterization and type of thing implemented into the games themselves. I mean, there really is a lot of potential there. And even things they could do go beyond that. We've always been in forest settings, cave settings. They could go beyond that and maybe even get into mayhaps city settings and do stuff with that whole perspective.
Oh, wow.
I mean, there's a lot of potential here just because of the whole size aspect that we haven't really looked at.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
I don't have a whole lot to say on this because I'm not really a Pikmin fan. I've really only played... Yeah, I mean, I don't dislike the series. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to start any controversy. I think the series is great. Yeah, right. I think the series is great. I'm not really into those kinds of games personally, so I just never really got into it. That said, I have played Little Pikmin 3. I thought it was really cool. And I'm not at all surprised that they're thinking about making more Pikmin games. Pikmin especially seems to be kind of Miyamoto's darling project as of late. He just seems to really love Pikmin. Mm-hmm. As you said, he made those shorts, and the demo came out in the eShop a while ago, and they even made a whole announcement about it just for a demo. So yeah, I'm not surprised they're making a new one. As for new ideas, I don't really have a whole lot, except for the fact that I'm surprised that the series hasn't really found its way to 3DS yet, because it seems like with the touch interface, it seems like that'd be a great way to throw Pikmin and organize Pikmin in general. It just seems like with the touch interface, it's really suited to kind of strategy and team management games like that. So I wonder if maybe they'll do that next.
Well, yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought that's what they would do with Pikmin 3 on the Wii U, because they had that same interface built in with the gamepad, and they only used it for a map, which from my review I wasn't a fan of. But I thought it was done better in previous Pikmin games. But yeah, I'm with you. I think there's a lot of potential with a touch interface that they could do. Whether it's, I mean, that would allow you to very quickly, very easily, redirect a group of Pikmin to certain parts on the map, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a ton of unexplored potential there. I guess the only thing is like balancing. They don't want the whole thing with Pikmin is it's basically a simple RTS, and the way to do that is you have an avatar you control. So I could see having a touch interface, very quickly possibly getting too far away from that idea. But I feel like if anyone could pull it off, keeping it still simple, it would be Nintendo. And I think there's a lot they could do with that, with that kind of idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, they could even have it where, like, maybe you control, like, instead of Olimar being a character on the ground, maybe he flies, like, in a spaceship overhead. That gives him, like, a top-down view, which would be represented on the gamepad. And you fly around the map, give you a controlled area in which you still have, control over, and that's how you direct Pikmin from there. I think, you'd, like, maybe draw circles around them to catch their attention, and you point, just tap where you want them to go next.
Yeah, that has a lot of potential.
Yeah, that could be cool. And I guess now that the series has several different playable characters now, you have the 3 in Pikmin 3 as well as Olimar and Louie. I could see maybe like a multiplayer element that, like a 4 or 5 player multiplayer element where each person is commanding their own Pikmin army. I don't know the specifics of how it would work, but now that there's, that many playable characters to choose from, that could be something to explore in a possible sequel.
Oh, I would love to see actually a co-op campaign, or just a full co-op mode in the game. Mm-hmm. That would be really cool. But yeah, they've had multiple characters now since Pikmin 2, but you have to switch between them. Why not allow you to have different people play them? I mean, probably because it'd be a pain to handle that hardware-wise. Yeah. Like, you could do it online, I would think, possibly, right? Like, why not let you play online co-op or?
Yeah, it has potential. Even just maybe have some limiting factors to the multiplayer. Like, instead of having being of a max of 100 Pikmin, maybe you can only have 50 Pikmin now. But that also
50 each or something.
Yeah, exactly. But that also deals with the strategy where you really do have to work together with what kind of Pikmin you have. Like, okay, I need this many Pikmin to get through here. You need to grab that many Pikmin, and we can work together and get through it. It'd be some really interesting challenges that they could make using that limitation.
Right. Actually, now that you mention it, that actually could be something that would work well, probably on the 3DS, Ash, as you mentioned. Where everyone just has their own screen, their own view, and that way, like on the Wii U, you don't have to, as with the Wii U, rather, you'd have to render the scene twice. On the 3DS, it'd be less of an issue. So yeah, I mean, I think that'd be cool. It would make sense. All right, well, I think that wraps up for us here. So thanks, guys, for watching. If you liked our discussion, make sure to like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, which you can find links to in the description below. It's a good way to keep up to date on everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on Starfox, F-Zero, hopefully Zelda Wii U, and other things gaming as well. All right, thanks, guys. Bye.